Fuel the fire within. A good evening. Let's skip the warm-up. There's work to do. Everything you've ever admired, every breakthrough, every invention, every leap forward, started with a spark, a thought, a sense that something should exist that doesn't, that things could be better, that boundaries are optional. That's the fire, but having the fire is not rare. Most people have it at some point, a brief moment of clarity, urgency, irrational boldness. Then it fades, drowned by routine, smothered by fear, buried under social conditioning. The problem isn't that people lack potential, it's that they never feed it. You have to fuel the fire. That means making decisions not based on what's easy, but on what aligns with that internal urgency to build, to solve, to stretch. That fire is your edge, and ignoring it is how people end up living lives that look fine on the outside and feel empty on the inside. This isn't about motivation, that's temporary. This is about commitment to a direction even when the results aren't immediate. It's about doing what matters even when no one's watching, even when no one believes in it yet, including you. You want progress, you want velocity. Start feeding the engine that already exists inside you. Don't wait for someone else to validate it. Don't wait for the perfect conditions. Conditions are rarely perfect. That's not how the world works. Here's a principle. If the fire inside you burns hotter than the friction outside, you win. Most people get worn down by the friction, the criticism, the long hours, the failure loop, the discomfort of not having guarantees. But if you're serious, you don't try to eliminate the friction. You just burn it. You build more energy than the world can take from you. That energy comes from purpose. Not in the abstract sense, but in the very real belief that what you're doing should exist, that it solves a problem, that it moves the needle, that it challenges entropy. Entropy wants you to stay comfortable. It wants decay, disorder, apathy. The fire is anti-entropy. It is directed, intentional, focused chaos. Fuel it with curiosity. Ask more questions than you're comfortable with. Hunt down what doesn't make sense and try to solve it. Fuel it with action, not talk, not tweets, not wishful thinking, real execution, real prototypes, real feedback from reality. Fuel it with resilience. When your plans collapse, rebuild. When your code fails, debug. When your team doubts, push forward anyway. The fire doesn't care if things are hard. That's what it's for. Fuel it with constraint. Pressure isn't the enemy, it's the catalyst. Deadlines, limitations, resource scarcity. These are not problems. They're the furnace. They force prioritization. They kill fluff. They accelerate learning. If you're only on fire when it's easy, you're not on fire. And if you find yourself coasting, bored, playing small, that's a sign. The fire's burning low. Check your inputs. What are you doing daily that actually fuels your system? If it's just consumption, just maintenance, just status management, you're starving your core engine. Don't confuse comfort for success. Don't confuse visibility for progress. Don't confuse applause for meaning. The fire doesn't care about optics. It cares about output. So ignore the noise. Ignore the narrative that says don't work too hard. Don't take big risks. Stay balanced. No. Push yourself to the edge of what you think is possible, and then stay there. Long enough for adaptation to kick in. Long enough for breakthroughs to emerge. That edge is where the fire does its best work. In the unknown, in the tension between failure and future, that's the lab, that's the forge. No one fuels your fire for you. No external system will give you lasting drive. You have to be your own power source. You have to generate heat while moving forward. That's what makes a builder. That's what makes a real innovator. So stop waiting. Stop negotiating with inertia. Stop asking for permission to care about something deeply. Fan the flame. Build what matters. Burn clean. Burn consistently. Burn through the noise. Fuel the fire within before the world convinces you to put it out. If the fire inside you burns hotter than the friction outside, you win. The world is full of friction, delays, critics, rejections, failures, fatigue, complexity. It never stops. Every time you try to build something new, challenge a system, or improve yourself, resistance shows up. That resistance can take many forms. Sometimes it's logistical, limited resources, bad timing, lack of support. Sometimes it's mental imposter syndrome, self-doubt, fear of failure. Sometimes it's social. Skeptics, cynics, gatekeepers, people telling you you're doing too much, dreaming too big, or moving too fast. Friction is part of the system. It's not optional. It's not personal. It's structural. The only question is whether your internal drive exceeds that external drag. That drive, the fire, is your competitive advantage. It's the engine that turns thought into motion, motion into feedback, and feedback into momentum. Without it, friction wins. It slows you down, wears you out, makes you question whether it's worth it. It doesn't take much resistance to stop someone who's barely lit inside. But if the flame is strong, if you have enough clarity, urgency, and obsession, then the world's resistance just becomes noise. You don't eliminate friction by avoiding challenges. That's not possible. Every system worth improving is hard to change. Every industry worth disrupting has inertia built in. Every goal worth chasing requires pushing against something, sometimes everything. The friction isn't the problem. The lack of internal fuel is. When your mind is underpowered, resistance feels bigger than it is. You start interpreting neutral obstacles as permanent barriers. But when your internal fire is hot enough, friction becomes part of the process. You burn through it, not instantly, but persistently. You stop expecting smooth roads and start optimizing for traction. The fire isn't emotion. It's not hype, inspiration, or excitement. Those things are volatile. They fade when things get hard. The fire is something deeper. It's sustained energy driven by purpose, curiosity, and intolerance for stagnation. It's built from your belief that something should exist and that it's your responsibility to create it. Whether that's a company, a project, a mindset, or a new version of yourself. The fire is not fueled by praise or validation. It burns quietly, especially when no one is watching. The problem most people face is that they misinterpret friction as a verdict, as a signal to stop, to wait, to reconsider. But friction isn't feedback about your worth. It's just physics. Things in motion meet resistance. That's universal. The question is whether you've built enough thermal mass inside to keep moving anyway. Most people don't. They rely on external motivation to start and then get confused when it doesn't last. External conditions fluctuate. Internal fire is the only stable energy source you control. Friction will attack from every angle. You'll launch something and get silence instead of applause. You'll take a risk and lose money, time, or trust. You'll work for months and still feel behind. People will question your choices, misunderstand your intent, underestimate your ability. Systems will push back. Algorithms will ignore you. The market will test your patience. That's friction. And if your fire burns weak, it will feel like evidence that you're on the wrong path. But it's not. It's just the cost of forward motion. You need to build a system that regenerates internal fire. That system starts with remembering why you started in the first place. Not in vague terms, but in specific, personal, mission-level clarity. What problem are you solving? What gap are you filling? What outcome are you obsessed with? The more clearly defined that is, the easier it is to convert pain into progress. If you have no clarity, friction consumes you. But if your target is sharp, every form of resistance becomes something you can metabolize. You don't avoid it. You convert it. Every hour spent doubting yourself is an hour not building. Every unit of energy spent analyzing friction instead of fueling your fire is a loss. The people who win are not the ones who had the least resistance. They're the ones who had the highest internal combustion. They found ways to move, adapt, ship, and reship, even while everything around them tried to drag them back to neutral. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They didn't depend on being understood. They just kept burning. The fire has to come from a place that doesn't need permission. If your momentum is dependent on external applause, you're vulnerable. If it's dependent on smooth feedback loops, you're fragile. The fire needs to be self-sustaining. That means cultivating habits, environments, inputs, and routines that reinforce your identity as a builder, a driver, a doer. You can't just hope for energy, you have to engineer it daily. Discipline is a form of fuel, so is curiosity, so is tension. The good kind, the kind that comes from knowing that where you are isn't where you should be yet. That gap, when handled right, creates heat. That friction between now and next becomes combustion material. You just have to contain it, focus it, direct it into action. Don't let it leak into comparison, self-pity, or delay. Burning hotter than friction doesn't mean never feeling tired. It means continuing to act even when you are. It means knowing that your vision is bigger than your emotions in the moment. It means choosing to move forward when it would be easier to retreat or wait. It means creating output when you feel unsure. It means saying yes to the version of yourself that wants to solve, build, and grow, and saying no to the one that wants to hide, hesitate, or explain. Momentum is a form of heat. When you take action, even small action, you generate warmth. That warmth reinforces your identity. It makes the next action easier. That's the feedback loop. Fuel the fire, generate motion, feed on motion, build resilience, outpace friction. The opposite loop is also real. Hesitate, lose warmth, amplify doubt, get dragged by friction, stop. People don't lose to friction because they aren't smart or capable. They lose because they didn't tend to the fire. They let it cool. They waited for external validation to relight it. They forgot that the engine was theirs to maintain. You don't need more time. You don't need more permission. You need to reignite. Friction will always be part of the landscape. It's not going anywhere. The world will not rearrange itself to make your path smoother. It will challenge your consistency. It will challenge your focus. It will challenge your patience. What you control is whether you're running cold or running hot, whether you've designed a system that keeps your internal pressure high enough to keep pushing forward when others stall. The game is not who avoids friction, it's who burns through it. Fuel your drive with action, not intention. Intention is cheap. Everyone has it. You can walk into any room and find people with big ideas, bold plans, long to-do lists, an ambitious dream. People want to write the book, start the business, launch the product, change their life. The intent is there. It sounds good. It feels good to talk about, but nothing changes through intention alone. Intention without execution is just a delay tactic dressed in optimism. It makes people feel like they're moving when, in reality, they're stuck in planning loops and mental rehearsals that never touch the real world. Action is the difference, not polished action, not perfectly timed, optimized action, just motion, decisions that result in change, steps that create consequences, things you can measure, track, and iterate. If you're not generating outcomes, you're not driving anything. You're just sitting behind the wheel with your foot off the gas, staring at the map, convinced you're making progress because you've thought through every possible turn. The road doesn't respond to thought, it responds to movement. Intent is passive, it lives in your head, it's private, risk-free, and painless. You can spend years there without judgment. Action is public. It creates friction, it invites feedback, criticism, results, exposure. That's why most people avoid it. It's not that they don't care, it's that caring only matters if it translates into momentum. Drive isn't how hard you think about your goal. It's how aggressively you pursue them. That pursuit is always made visible through what you do, not what you say you'll do. The mistake people make is assuming they need to feel ready before they act. They think there's some perfect intersection of confidence and clarity that will unlock their next move. That doesn't exist. Readiness is a myth created by fear to justify inaction. If you wait until the hesitation is gone, you're going to wait forever. People who move fast, who build, who adapt aren't fearless. They just don't use fear as a reason to stall. They move inside the fear, they launch while uncertain, they act even while doubting themselves. That's what separates builders from thinkers. Builders turn intent into iteration. They build the MVP, make the call, ship the update, test the theory, publish the post, show their work, and every time they do, they collect data. They get stronger. They learn what works and what doesn't. Intenders don't get that. They stay in the pre-launch phase. They revise their plan until the plan becomes a new distraction. They confuse planning with execution. Action is the best diagnostic tool. You can't fix a system you haven't run. You can't refine a product that doesn't exist. You can't improve a skill you've never tested. Action gives you feedback loops. Without those loops, you're stuck inside your own assumptions, and assumptions are dangerous. They're based on limited input. The only way to test them is to collide with reality, and you only collide with reality through action. Your brain will always prefer comfort. It will always look for ways to delay risk. That's evolutionary, but in the modern world, that instinct doesn't serve you. Comfort is not the goal, progress is. And progress requires friction. Action forces friction. It creates tension between where you are and where you want to be. That tension is uncomfortable but necessary. It's what drives learning. It's what refines judgment. It's what creates the capacity to build things that matter. You can't think your way into better outcomes. You act your way there. If you're not shipping, iterating, testing, or pushing something forward, you're burning time. Energy spent refining an idea is only useful up to the point it replaces actual building. After that, it's a tax on your own momentum. Speed matters, not blind speed, but directional speed. Velocity towards something that produces feedback. You also have to stop measuring yourself by your intentions. Your intent is not your identity. Your actions are. If you want to be a writer, write. If you want to be an entrepreneur, build. If you want to be a leader, lead. The title means nothing without the behavior. The desire means nothing without the output. Identity follows behavior, not belief. There's an idea people hold that they need more time to figure things out. But most clarity comes after you move, not before. You don't figure things out by standing still. You figure them out by taking action, seeing what breaks, seeing what works, and adjusting. Waiting for certainty before you act is like waiting for your muscles to grow before you start training. It's backward. Progress is created by the reps, not by the intent to do reps. The first version of anything will be wrong. That's not a problem, it's the point. You can't optimize something you haven't built. The function of early action is not to get it right. It's to get it real. You build something, test it, break it, improve it, and repeat. That cycle is what creates competence. That cycle is what transforms a vague goal into something tangible. And every cycle makes you more dangerous, more skilled, and more immune to hesitation. People overestimate the risk of action and underestimate the cost of delay. The cost of not trying, of not starting, of not building, compounds over time. It's invisible at first, but devastating long term. Every day you don't act, your intent loses weight. Your self-trust erodes, your goals decay into wishes, and one day you realize you're the same person with the same ideas, just older and less willing to risk. If you want to maintain drive, you need to see evidence that your energy is converting into results. That evidence doesn't come from thoughts. It comes from execution. Small wins compound. Completed actions stack. You build momentum by watching yourself do hard things. That's what fuels internal trust. That's what creates the feedback loop of self-belief. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Don't wait for clarity. Don't wait for motivation. Build your engine through action. Take the smallest possible step toward the thing you've been putting off. Move in the direction of the friction. Let results replace excuses. Let output replace delay. Action is how you prove to yourself that the drive is real. It's how you turn intent into inertia, and once you've built inertia, everything changes. You said keynote no. 3 expanded into 1,000 words. Don't add ending sentences. Don't add any heading, ChatGPT said. Constraint isn't a barrier, it's the furnace. Most people view constraint as a disadvantage. Limited resources, tight deadlines, lack of support, imperfect tools, these are often seen as obstacles, as reasons to slow down, postpone, or not even start. But constraint, when handled correctly, is a source of heat. It sharpens focus, forces prioritization, and ignites creative solutions that abundance often hides. Constraints apply pressure, and pressure creates intensity. That intensity is where momentum lies. When you treat constraint as a barrier, it stops you. When you treat it as the furnace, it fuels you. Abundance can create complacency. Too many options lead to indecision. Too much time leads to delay. Too much funding leads to bloated teams, overpolished products, and weak assumptions that never get tested under pressure. When everything is available, nothing feels urgent. When nothing feels urgent, nothing gets done fast enough to matter. Constraint kills that illusion. It removes comfort and replaces it with immediacy. It demands action. You don't have time to wait. You don't have unlimited resources to waste. Every decision matters. That edge sharpens execution. Working with constraint doesn't mean lowering ambition. It means increasing efficiency. It means learning to do more with less, fewer meetings, more output. Smaller teams, tighter collaboration. Less talk, more build. Every limitation becomes a forcing function. Every problem becomes a design prompt. Constraint doesn't reduce your potential. It refines it. It removes the fluff and leaves only what moves the needle. That process doesn't feel comfortable, but it's productive. Most innovation didn't come from perfect conditions. It came from urgency, from someone staring down the impossible and deciding to build anyway. It came from teams with no budget, no time, no precedent. The first version of most world-changing products was hacked together under pressure, not crafted in a lab of abundance. The furnace was real tight windows, impossible specs, skeptical markets. That furnace is where the best work happens, not in spite of the constraint, but because of it. Constraint drives better thinking. When resources are scarce, you don't get to chase every idea, you have to choose. You have to rank. You have to kill your darlings and bet on the solution with the highest leverage. That mental rigor is what prevents waste. It's what creates elegance. Some of the most iconic designs and technologies emerged from brutal limitations. The constraint wasn't the enemy, it was the blueprint. It forced clarity where comfort would have allowed bloat. There's a tendency to romanticize freedom. People imagine that if they had more time, more money, more support, more clarity, then they would finally do the work. But the opposite is usually true. Most people don't act until they have to, until the deadline looms, until the window is closing, until the stakes are real. Constraint activates urgency. Urgency activates output. And output, not intention, is what drives progress. Constraints also build resilience. When you're used to getting things done under pressure, with fewer tools, with imperfect conditions, you become harder to stop. You don't need ideal circumstances. You don't complain about what's missing. You've trained under pressure, so you adapt fast. You've learned how to improvise, how to build something functional before it's perfect. That ability makes you dangerous. People who only operate in abundance are fragile. The moment things tighten, they stall. But if you've already been building inside constraint, it's just another day in the furnace. Your environment might not be optimized for success. You might not have support. You might not have all the tools you wish you had. But you have pressure, and pressure is powerful. It sharpens instincts. It tests assumptions, it forces speed. That speed doesn't reduce quality, it reveals it. The best systems aren't built with unlimited time. They're built with tight loops, fast cycles, limited slack. The furnace doesn't allow drift. It keeps everything hot, moving, refining. Constraint also enhances creativity. When you can't take the obvious path, you're forced to invent new ones. Some of the most interesting solutions come from being boxed in. Creativity thrives under challenge. It doesn't need more options. It needs fewer with higher stakes. When you're constrained, you look at the same problem with new eyes. You take risks you wouldn't have taken in comfort. You prototype, test, iterate faster. That speed of iteration, born from necessity, is often what leads to breakthroughs. You don't need to escape constraint. You need to harness it. Treat it as a lever, not a weight. The question is never, how do I remove this limit? The better question is, how do I build within this limit and still win? That question creates real answers. It focuses your energy. It compresses your thinking into tight, actionable moves. That compression is not a weakness, it's high efficiency fuel. Constraint exposes your priorities. When you can't do everything, you find out what actually matters. You stop adding features and start solving core problems. You stop obsessing over optics and start delivering functionality. You stop overbuilding and start shipping. That transition from unlimited ambition to laser-focused execution is one of the most powerful shifts you can make. And it usually doesn't happen until constraint forces it. Constraint isn't about doing less, it's about doing smarter. It's about stacking limited inputs in a way that generates outsized outcomes. It's not about working longer. It's about focusing deeper. When you're inside the furnace, you're not allowed to waste time. Every move is calculated. Every experiment is urgent. That urgency leads to momentum, and momentum creates compound effects that abundance alone could never replicate. Constraint also aligns teams. When everyone knows the clock is ticking, that resources are tight, that there's no room for fluff. Alignment becomes natural, people focus, distractions drop, meetings get shorter. Decisions get faster, execution rises, there's no room for politics, ego, or indecision. The constraint doesn't allow it. That pressure becomes the culture, not in a toxic way, but in a focused one. It becomes clear that this isn't about pretending to work. It's about actually building something that works. You'll always wish you had more clarity, more time, more capital, more certainty, but none of those are guaranteed. What is guaranteed is that constraint will always be part of the game. The sooner you stop seeing it as a roadblock and start using it as a tool, the faster you adapt. You're not supposed to have everything figured out. You're supposed to figure it out inside the heat. That's the whole point of the furnace. That's where real execution is forged. Comfort kills momentum. Tension builds breakthroughs. Momentum is not an accident. It's not a side effect of motivation or luck. Momentum is built through movement, and that movement usually starts with tension. Internal pressure, external stakes, the discomfort of being in unfamiliar territory. It's when you feel stretched, when the path ahead is unclear, when the outcome is uncertain, that you begin to move in ways that generate real acceleration. That tension is not a sign that something's wrong. It's a signal that something is shifting. It's the friction point between where you are and where you could be. Comfort, on the other hand, is the anesthetic. It feels safe, but it slows you down. It removes urgency. It allows drift. When things feel good enough, people stop pushing. They settle. They optimize for stability instead of growth. That's where progress dies, not in failure, but in equilibrium, in the illusion that there's no need to stretch anymore. The truth is, comfort is rarely neutral. It's a slow decay, a low-grade decline. It dulls your edge. It softens your instinct to solve, to adapt, to iterate. Breakthroughs happen when you're under stress, not panic, but pressure. When the stakes are real, when the decision matters, when the old approach doesn't work anymore, and the only way forward is through invention, that environment doesn't exist in comfort zones. It lives in tension. That's where your thinking sharpens, your creativity activates, your problem solving speeds up. When the margin for error is thin, your attention deepens. You stop indulging distractions. You start finding angles no one saw before. The most productive people are not the most comfortable. They're the most adapted to discomfort. They've trained themselves to operate inside tension. They don't avoid it, they lean into it. They've stopped expecting clarity and started building inside uncertainty. That habit is what creates consistent breakthroughs, not genius, not inspiration, just repeatable, directional pressure applied through action, over and over. That's what turns skill into mastery and effort into results. Comfort feels like a reward, but often it's just a plateau, and people mistake plateaus for safety. They assume that if things aren't breaking, they're working, but stagnation is often disguised as success. If you're not solving new problems, you're probably avoiding them. If you're not feeling tension, you might be too insulated from challenge. Growth lives in places where things might not work. That risk is necessary. That's where learning lives. The brain adapts quickly to comfort. What once felt exciting becomes normal. What once felt like progress becomes routine. The only way to avoid that is to keep escalating the challenge. Not recklessly, but strategically. If you're not constantly calibrating your environment to introduce useful tension, it will decay toward comfort. That decay doesn't feel painful, it feels like ease. That's what makes it dangerous. It lulls you into thinking you're still moving when you've actually stopped. You don't need chaos to grow, but you do need friction. You need resistance, a weight to push against. A challenge that stretches your capacity, a constraint that forces adaptation. Comfort offers none of that. It offers rest, which is fine in small doses. But if rest becomes the lifestyle, you lose the sharpness that created your early momentum. You become risk-averse. You start protecting what you've built instead of evolving it. Momentum comes from tension because tension requires energy. It demands a response. It triggers decision-making. That energy translates into speed. The faster you iterate under tension, the more feedback you get. The more feedback you get, the more you refine. That feedback loop is the engine. Breakthroughs are rarely planned in calm moments. They emerge from active iteration under pressure. When you're building with urgency, when you're solving with consequences, when you're too busy moving to indulge self-doubt, comfort invites second guessing. It creates space for overthinking. When nothing is urgent, everything becomes optional. People start spending more time debating than doing. Ideas stay in notebooks. Feedback gets postponed. Deadlines slip. The system loses heat. The output slows, and no one notices at first because the system still looks fine on the outside. But inside, the spark is gone. It's not broken. It's just cooling down. That cooling is hard to reverse. Tension fixes that. It reignites urgency. It demands choices. It removes luxury thinking. Under pressure, you don't have time for ego or fluff. You have to move. That movement activates flow. Flow is not born from relaxation. It's born from challenge that slightly exceeds your current capacity. That's the sweet spot. Just enough stress to force your attention into the present moment. Just enough complexity to require your full mind. That's where breakthroughs live. The discomfort of tension isn't a flaw in the system. It's the mechanism. It's the indicator that you're in the zone where something new can happen. If everything feels easy, it means you're not reaching, you're not stretching, you're not trying anything bold. You're just repeating what already works. That repetition might feel productive, but it's not evolution. It's maintenance, and maintenance doesn't lead to momentum. Momentum is directional. It means every move builds on the last. That only happens when you're pushing into unknowns. Known territory doesn't accelerate. It repeats. Unknown territory forces you to invent, to adjust, to build real-time solutions. That's why tension matters. It forces novelty. It demands creativity. It makes you resourceful. You don't grow by thinking harder. You grow by doing under pressure. The key is not to seek chaos, but to design useful discomfort. Deadlines, constraints, public commitments, accountability loops. These are tools. You don't need to live in burnout to grow, but you do need to introduce strategic friction. Systems that stretch you, metrics that challenge you, projects that scare you a little, those conditions force evolution. They keep the fire hot. You can feel the difference. When you're coasting, the energy drops. Time expands, focus drifts, but when you're inside tension, time compresses. Every second matters. Attention tightens, momentum builds. It's uncomfortable, but unmistakably alive. That sense of velocity, of movement, of iteration in real time. That's the payoff. That's the engine that creates compounding returns. Most people don't burn out from tension. They burn out from stagnation, from pretending to be busy while making no progress, from endless meetings with no outcomes, from to-do lists that never produce results. Real work, the kind done under useful pressure, energizes. It can exhaust your body, but it wakes up your mind. It connects you to purpose. It gives your effort direction. Tension is not a problem to be solved. It's a signal to be followed. It means something is being asked of you that your current level can't yet deliver. That's the cue. That's the moment to lean in, not to escape it, but to use it. Because on the other side of that pressure, past the friction, through the constraint, is the breakthrough, the version of you that wasn't available in comfort, the insight that wasn't visible from the plateau, the solution that wasn't accessible until the pressure forced it out.